So, good afternoon and welcome back. Um, we're now going to start session two of this Credence Showcase event. And session two, we're going to hear reflections. So in session one, we heard and saw some presentations and got some feedback from some of our industry advisory committee members. In this session, we're going to hear from a number of people who weren't directly involved in the project to get their reflections of the project, some of the outcomes and impacts, and more broadly, where it fits in the context of US-Ireland research collaboration. So to start with, what I'll do is I'll show the video again, this short video that we showed at the start of session one, which just captures in brief some of the outcomes and outputs of the Credence project.
And now a new climate bill, which mirrors what the UK did in their legislation, but is, I think, setting probably one of the most ambitious targets. We want to half our emissions in this next decade. I don't think that's done before, but I think Ireland will come out that stronger as we head to net zero. To do it, I'm taking research now from the University College Cork Mara Institute. They looked at how to get to net zero. They estimate, well, we'll start by in this decade electricity 7 to 80% renewables at the end of this decade, net zero, no fossil fuels by the middle of the next decade.
I always love that picture at the end of all the researchers because they're all smiling. So they clearly enjoyed the project as much as I did. Okay, so to kick off the reflections, we're very honored to have the Ambassador of Ireland to the United States, Dan Mulhall, with us to give some initial reflections. And I do want to acknowledge and thank the Embassy for their support in not only in putting together this showcase event, but also the support through the years as we've visited the US for St. Patrick's Day activities and brought some science from the Credence project to those discussions. So Ambassador Mulhall, the floor is yours, please.
Myself, yes, there I am now. I'm now unmuted. Thank you, Ryan, for giving me the chance to speak here at this event. I'm delighted to do so. I think just with a general remark to begin with, there's clearly a great appetite now at the highest level, as we saw at the EU-US summit a couple of weeks back in Brussels. At the highest level, on both sides of the Atlantic, there's a real appetite for renewed transatlantic effort and cooperation and a big part of the focus is obviously on tackling climate change, dealing with environmental degradation, loss of biodiversity, promotion of green growth, and the protection of our oceans. So we're speaking here about topics that are very much germane to the broader transatlantic relationship at this time. I think that over the past 25 years, Ireland has been on a real journey to become an innovation leader to the development of world-class research development and an innovation ecosystem that we hope can match the best in the world. Our economy has been dramatically transformed. I'm saying this mainly for the benefit of our American participants here today, from a low base in the mid-20th century to a highly advanced, productive and open economy and society that we are today, because we are one of the countries in Europe now that has a very high percentage of people born outside Ireland who live in our country, and we've managed to avoid the temptations of nativist populism, which have unfortunately emerged elsewhere around Europe and beyond. Successive Irish governments, I think, have invested heavily in our human capital, and I am a personal example of that because my first year at high school was the first year when high school education was free of all fees. This was a decision taken by the Irish government in the late 60s, which resulted in a dramatic transformation of the educational environment in Ireland, and meant that people of my generation had the chance to be the first members of their families ever to go to university and to have a third level education opportunity. And that has been a transformative experience for Ireland. And my vision of Ireland is that we have transformed ourselves this past 50 years by membership of the European Union and by heavy investment in education. It seems to me that the next stage in our development has to be transformation through heavy investment in research, because we now have a highly educated population, but we can't afford to sit back and rest on our laurels, because we recognize the world is a rapidly changing place, and the game we play in is being played at an ever higher level with more and more competition globally. And if we're going to keep pace and remain ahead of the pack, we've got to invest heavily in research. We have done that over the last couple of decades. And for example, the strategy for science and technology and innovation, which was devised in the middle of the first decade, in the middle of the first decade of the 21st century, established some priority areas for research funding, 14 in all. And these included emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, robotics, future networks, therapeutics and medical devices, sustainable food, energy, and advanced manufacturing. And the most recent government innovation strategy, Innovation 2020, it targeted Ireland to become a global innovation leader through a range of interventions by government, a drawdown of 1.25 billion euros, about $1.5 billion from the EU budget in funding supported by the European Union, a focus on 6 enterprise areas: ICT, health and medicine, health and medical devices, food, energy, manufacturing and materials, services, and business processes. It also involved an expansion of our research networks, or research centers, a strengthening of our intellectual property regime, and a development of our skills base to make sure that we can upskill our population further. An already highly skilled population, highly educated population, needs to be further upskilled through an increase in research masters and PhDs, particularly in digital skills. There's also been a modernization of our public services through various processes that have taken place during my time in the last 20 years. I've seen dramatic changes in the way the public service operates. And of course, building further streams of international cooperation through our Global Ireland policy, which involves doubling Ireland's footprint over the next 10 years globally, and achieving various targets in terms of peacekeeping, involvement in international organizations, rollout of development aid, across the board, we are now an ambitious country determined to make an impact on the global stage, and we're currently a member of the United Nations Security Council. And now the results from this sustained focus on investment have been significant. We've seen, for example, private sector investment in R&D increase from, in 25 years, we had 800. We had 800 active firms. Now we have 1,800 firms, and they spent a total of 3.25 billion euros, which is about $4 billion in 2019. We've also had investment in research, development, and innovation increasing every year from 2.5 billion euros in 2011 to 4.37 in 2019, which is a rise of 71%. Government investment has also increased quite dramatically. So we're now identified within the European Union as a strong innovator, and we're ranked 9th in the European Innovation Strategy scorecard. We would have been way down the field only 10 or so years ago. Now we've really made huge strides in that area. We're also one of the most efficient in terms of outputs relative to investment, and we outrank 10 other member states that invest more in R&D. So even though we may be below other countries, we outrank many of them in terms of the effectiveness of the R&D money that we invest. We still have work to do, and our new strategy includes the setting up of a new government department, department for higher education, research, innovation, and science, headed by Minister Simon Harris, who's got big ambitions to drive innovation and excellence in education and higher education through that new government department. I see the history of our relationship with the United States in the following terms. In the 19th century, we exported people. It was a one-way traffic across the Atlantic from Ireland to the United States, people fleeing from Ireland looking for better lives for themselves and their families in the United States, which they achieved and which they managed to contribute hugely their skills and resources and energies to the development of this country, very rapid development of this country in the period after the American Civil War. In the 20th century, we saw traffic in the other direction, where American tourists basically stimulated the development of a proper tourism industry in Ireland. American investors helped to transform the Irish economy into the successful economy it is today. And my vision for the 21st century is of a two-way traffic across the Atlantic in ideas and innovation, because my firmest conclusion from 40 years of involvement in diplomatic service in global economic and political issues is that no part of the world, no country and no region of the world has any sort of monopoly on wisdom. We need to work together in order to secure the kind of advances that we need to secure if we're to keep pace with the challenges that face us today and tomorrow. Just a few words before I finish about the Credence project. Ireland and America have both set very challenging targets for climate action. We are seeking to halve our greenhouse emissions by 2030. And I look back to a speech that President John F. Kennedy made about the space race in the early 60s, when he actually quoted an Irish writer. President Biden does the same. This is a different Irish writer. This is Frank O'Connor, a great Irish short story writer. President Biden tends to quote Seamus Heaney and William Butler Yeats, two great Irish poets. But President Kennedy said, Frank O'Connor, the Irish writer, tells in one of his books how, as a boy, he and his friends would make their way across the countryside. And when they came to an orchard wall that seemed too high and too doubtful to try and too difficult to permit their voice to continue, they took off their hats and tossed them over the wall. And then they had no choice but to follow them, because they knew that they wouldn't want to face the wrath of their Irish mothers if they arrived home without their hats. This, President Kennedy said, this nation, this is America, has tossed its cap over the wall of space, and we have no choice but to follow it. Whatever the difficulties, they will be overcome. Whatever the hazards, they must be guarded against. We will climb this wall with safety and with speed, and we shall then explore the wonders on the other side. That was President Kennedy speaking very shortly before his tragic death in November 1963. So here we are, throwing our hats over the wall of climate action, trying to find ways of responding to the very real challenges that face us. And I think we all recognize the scale of the challenge. You only have to look at the temperatures that are being recorded today in the United States to know just how much of a challenge we face. And you know, there are no simple solutions. You know, we have to find a way of curbing climate change, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, while at the same time, you know, enabling life to continue in some sort of reasonable fashion. In other words, we can't, you know, close everything down. We have to find ways of living our lives slightly differently, but doing so in a way that respects the challenges and responds to the challenges of climate change. So collaborative research has a key role to play. We've seen that in the response to the pandemic and the development of vaccines, which were essentially a collaborative venture that involved Europeans and Americans working together. I think the Credence project demonstrates how the power of scientific research can be used to underpin decisions on emissions reductions in our energy systems. And we must look to your project to have, you know, important impacts in informing policy deliberations in the United States and Ireland and Northern Ireland, supporting industry partners that are at the frontiers of energy transition, empowering citizens and communities to realize their ambitions to positively engage with climate action. So the Credence project is funded by the US-Ireland Research and Development Partnership. The partnership was developed over several years, and it's a vibrant partnership between the United States, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. It is an excellent example of science and diplomacy working together in a unique trilateral partnership. It's also an outreach from the Good Friday Agreement. It's part of the legacy of the Good Friday Agreement. It was developed on the basis of the Good Friday Agreement's principles of equality, partnership, and mutual respect. In 2011, the partnership research areas were expanded to include telecommunications, energy, and sustainability. And this Credence project is the first center-to-center project funded in the area of energy and sustainability. So I'm delighted to speak here today at this event and to welcome the findings of this excellent piece of collaborative research, a piece of research that was birthed out of a process that promoted science as a means of achieving broader political, societal, and diplomatic ends. And it shows how far Ireland has come in terms of our own scientific journey, and it demonstrates the innovation and depth of expertise that we bring to our work with strategic partners, none of whom are more valued than the United States. So the journey of Irish-American relations continues. It's a multifaceted journey. It's a multifaceted process. It involves people-to-people links. It involves cultural ties. It involves political connections. It involves economic collaboration, economic exchanges, trade and investment flowing across the Atlantic in both directions. But importantly now, it includes important research links, and including the research link that is comes under the umbrella of the Credence project, to which I happily celebrate here today, and to which I wish every success in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That was very rich, and I just reflecting on a couple of things you mentioned. The increase in research expenditure is something that NARI has benefited from greatly. The US-Ireland program we've benefited from greatly as well. And that leads me as a lovely entry point into our next two speakers. These projects wouldn't happen without the funding that's provided. And so in the first instance, I'm delighted to welcome Ruth Freeman, who's the Director of Science for Society from Science Foundation Ireland, to share some reflections from her perspective. Ruth, over to you.
Thanks very much, Brian. Good to see you. And then thanks, Ambassador Mulhall. Nice to see you again too, from across the water. I'm really delighted to be here with you all today to showcase the Credence Research Programme. It gave me a good opportunity actually to reflect on the US-Ireland programme, which Ambassador Mulhall has just explained. This was a programme really that started in the early 2000s, the initial discussions, and was officially launched in 2006. And I reflected that was around the time that I joined Science Foundation Ireland. So it's a programme that's been going for a long time. I think it actually is our longest running unchanged, broadly unchanged program at this point. And I think that says something important about it. As the ambassador has said, it came out of this idea of a peace process and mutual respect and cooperation. But, at its heart, it aims to increase the level of collaborative research and development among researchers and industry professionals across these three jurisdictions. And clearly, while there is this goal to allow researchers to work together on really critical projects that are globally important, but it also, as research tends to, it fosters movement of people and ideas. It fosters dialogue and conversations between those participating nations. It reflects those shared values that we have. And I think it ultimately contributes to better mutual understanding, which perhaps is even more important today than it was when the program started back in the early 2000s. I mean, what's really important is it is a partnership of equals, and the way it's set up, each section of the research program achieves more as part of the partnership than it can on its own. And I think that's something that we can probably take into other aspects of our international cooperation. The other thing that I reflected on about this partnership, I referred to the fact it's our longest running. And I have to say, sitting around the executive table at Science Foundation Ireland, even in the toughest fiscal times, in the middle of the financial crisis, which certainly bit Ireland very hard, when really, really hard choices had to be made about which publicly funded programs were to be paused or reduced, the US-Ireland program has always been fully maintained. And I think that is a real test of the value that we place on it, and indeed, the value that we place on these really important partnerships for SFI with DFE and with the National Science Foundation. So even from today, we have great ambitions that the program will continue to go from strength to strength. We would love to see even more cooperation happening under the banner of this program. As in terms of thematic areas that are covered, again, it was mentioned that energy and sustainability were added in 2011, and indeed that the Credence project was the first centre-to-centre project funded under this banner. It was great in the earlier session to hear some of the findings and the impacts of this project, and great to hear just before some feedback from the Industry Advisory Committee as well. I think we've also heard clearly how the research funded here has been translated into policy insights that have informed energy and climate policy. And I know we're going to be hearing more about that shortly from Brian Carroll and Stephen McGonigal. But alongside those really evident benefits, and again, I know Brian talked about this before the break, that there's been some real important wider societal benefits that are very important to me and to Science Foundation Ireland. It's no accident that our recently launched strategy is titled Shaping Our Future. And at the heart of that strategy is the voice of Irish people, working with and supporting researchers to enable research that will make the greatest possible difference for our society today and tomorrow. I was lucky enough to hear a talk recently by a writer called Kate Raworth, who wrote the book Donut Economics. And, she talked about this idea, obviously, of, again, as the ambassador referred to, these difficult, challenging problems. And we have this dual issue where we want to try and sustain livelihoods, quality of life for people across the planet, but we have to live within these planetary boundaries. And certainly for me, research and innovation will play a huge part in how we're going to achieve that and how we're going to tackle these problems. But research on its own isn't going to be enough. We need that societal dialogue. We need acceptance. We need everyone to go on this journey together, because otherwise you just end up with division. So I'm really delighted that the Credence project, chose the Dingle Peninsula as a real life case study. And as part of this project, they're supporting the community there to realize their own ambitions to achieve this rural energy transition to a low carbon future. And, clearly this has been, achieved through something that, again, we are trying to develop more and more throughout our research portfolio, engaged and action research, so that the people are involved from the beginning. And this helps our understanding of how low carbon technologies are actually going to be deployed and adopted in the real world. Too often we've seen communication in science to be a one-way transfer of information from scientist to citizen. Often it's the big reveal at the end when we've discovered our results. But in the Credence project, I think we've seen real participation, dialogue, and new networks created. And again, as Brian referred to in his presentation, farmers have been part of the discussion to look at reducing emissions from dairy farms. Secondary school students have participated in climate hacks to think about their contributions to a sustainable future in their own locality. And I think that, the fact that the team used this novel ambassador program and actually learned from the community as it underwent this diffusion of sustainability, that was a really important part of the project. So as I said, I think we need more of these kind of dialogues in all research. New technologies and science are going to impact on different people and different places in different ways. So it's only right that end users are given opportunities to participate in their development. Of course, and the citizen as a key funder who is supporting this kind of work. Of course, excellence in research remains critically important as well. So again, I think one of the industry's partners mentioned, there's been more than 20 publications, many conference presentations from this project. The award has also, I suppose, fed on to support other funding coming in. And again, that's a real testament to the quality of the work that's been done by this team. So I just want to finish by saying well done to the entire Credence team. I look forward to seeing how the project will continue to contribute to energy policy and energy market design, and perhaps most importantly, how more people can be engaged to actively shape their own energy and climate future. And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I fully agree with the need for more engagement, and I welcome that move within SFI, towards a stronger, increased focus on public engagement, and as you say, then to building from that to have more engaged and action research with citizens and communities. I think it's critically important. So thank you very much, Ruth. I'd now like to pass on to Roxanne Nicolaus, who's the lead for Countries and Regions in the Countries and Regions Cluster Office of International Science and Engineering at the Office of Director of National Science Foundation. And I recall Ambassador Mulhall mentioned our new Minister Harris, who leads on research. And I recall a very interesting conversation we had during the St. Patrick's Day celebrations, and Joe was on the call too, where Minister Harris was there, NSF and SFI, and looking at how we can build on this this collaborative program and do even more. And Ruth mentioned that as well in her words. So Roxanne, over to you. I'd welcome your reflections on the Credence project and on the program. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here with you all, being part of this celebration of the success of Credence. The words that Ruth shared and that the ambassador shared really resonate with me and resonate with the attitude and perspective of NSF on this partnership. Yeah, I will certainly, say again what we heard at that St. Patrick's Day conversation, that this collaboration that we have between NSF, Science Foundation Ireland, and Department for the Economy in Northern Ireland, it's one of our priorities. It's one of our one of our best partnerships. So it's really no news to share with this group that international collaboration is critical for sharing ideas and building connections and generating new opportunities to spur progress. Our director at NSF, Dr. Setharaman Panchanathan, who we call Panch for obvious reasons, he became the director almost exactly a year ago. And he laid out a vision for NSF that has 3 pillars: advancing research into the frontiers of the future, ensuring accessibility and inclusivity in STEM fields, and securing global leadership. And when we say securing global leadership, we don't mean that America is the leader and everyone else follows. What we mean is that is leading through values, the values of research integrity, transparency, and reciprocity. And I know we share those values with Ireland and Northern Ireland. So a foundation for these 3 pillars are partnerships based on the mindset of innovation. And that sounds like center-to-center collaboration to me. The relationship between discovery-based, curiosity-driven research and use-inspired, solutions-focused innovation is part of NSF's DNA. And international partnerships, we think, are a very powerful tool and platform for that discovery and for that innovation. So as I already said, NSF considers our partnerships with SFI and Department for the Economy in Northern Ireland to be a great success. We see it as a win-win-win for our research communities, for our countries, and even beyond that. So other folks have already noted that these collaborations are tackling real-world challenges and are informing decisions, and that's really what it's all about. From our perspective at NSF, we feel like we are demonstrating that curiosity, dedication, and commitment to scientific inquiry benefits from just this type of international collaboration. And the results yield significant intellectual contributions that go beyond just that scientific curiosity, but really get into economic development, environmental stewardship, improving healthcare, so really impacting the lives of people. This partnership, we see it as a really exciting template for other countries and other governments as they seek to find ways to work together to advance scientific knowledge. And I'll say again that the contributing to the progress of humankind that other folks have already mentioned, getting to those real world challenges. Specifically, talking about the center-to-center collaborations launched under the broader trilateral partnership, we see as really demonstrating the value of the transatlantic cooperation. The linking of larger scale investments around the globe provides an opportunity to speed the advance of research to tackle these global challenges. At NSF, it's our engineering research centers that participate in the center-to-center collaboration. And our engineering research centers have continued to benefit greatly. There's increased participation of faculty, grad students, postdocs, other levels of students. We have industry partners. We have collaborative publications and roadmap for policy markers. So many benefits. And I will note that we actually have a 100% success rate for funding the center-to-center collaborations, which is pretty amazing. But I think that comes down to really what the funding agencies expect from the collaborations and what the research community delivers on those expectations. It's pretty phenomenal in my mind. So of course we have the intellectual component of center-to-center collaborations. So we're looking for transformative progress that's really a direct result of this center-to-center interactions. We're looking for ideas that push beyond the existing center activities, and we're looking for enduring results in knowledge and workforce development and technology transfer. Beyond the intellectual aspects, we're also looking at the question of, like, why does it all matter? Why are we funding these collaborations? So is there sustained interaction between faculty and students? What are the real tangible outcomes? What's going to result? What's the benefit to industry and society? And in terms of bigger picture infrastructure, what are the resources there to support realizing the research concepts? So we have, in a nutshell, research excellence, leveraged resources, and equitable participation from all the partners, all of that coming together to augment capacity, augment capabilities, and to accelerate the achievement of science. And that's what it's about. That's what we're trying to do. So based on all of this, it's easy to see why the Center to Center program serves as a model for other international engagement. NSF has already used it as a model to engage with one other country. We're working on another one. There is absolute interest at NSF in expanding beyond our engineering research centers. Our NSF director, Ponch, has challenged us at NSF with being more intentional in fostering connections beyond what PIs can do on their own. So how can funding agencies work together to push boundaries? What about centers that are international from the start, perhaps building on some of these other center to center collaborations? And we do have higher level support for pursuing these questions. Last month, the Biden-Harris administration issued its budget request for our fiscal year 2022. And it shows a definite commitment to science and to addressing climate. NSF received a 20% boost, and that includes 1.2 billion US dollars just in the NSF budget alone to address climate and clean energy related research. The budget also reflects a commitment to rapidly scaling investments in technology, innovation, and partnerships. So some folks on the line might already be aware that the budget proposes a new directorate at NSF for technology, innovation, and partnerships, or TIP, T-I-P. It is structured to cut horizontally across the rest of the NSF units to leverage ongoing research investments and grow them at speed and scale. Ponch, our director, I think his favorite words are at speed and scale. So we're always looking to what we can do bigger and faster. So ultimately, the new directorate's goal is accelerating the translation of fundamental research and enabling discoveries and innovations to have rapid and significant societal impacts. And when we talk about those impacts, it could be new businesses, new technologies, new services. It could be institutional changes, and how higher education organizations engage. And it could be practical experiences and changes in public policies, as we've been talking about today. So I'll just wrap it up by saying, at NSF, we see the US, Ireland, and Northern Ireland working together, building on innovations inherited from the great researchers in our countries of the past, and continuing to push forward the frontiers of science together.
Thank you very much, Roxanne. And one thing that struck me in the your deliberations was the mention of the increased budget for climate-related research, 1.2 billion, and we'd be happy to help you spend some of that. Another reflection on the sort of building forward in terms of the collaborations. One element of this, you mentioned some of the benefits. One of the sometimes hidden benefits is the personal benefit to the PhD students. We found on this center-to-center program, we had some PhD student exchanges, and they benefited scientifically, but also culturally, and in terms of there was very positive feedback from them from the experience of that exchange. So thank you very much for those words, Roxanne. We'll move on now to Stephen McGonigal, who's the Head of Energy Intelligence in the Department for the Economy in Northern Ireland. So Stephen, over to you for some reflections, please.
Brian, I think you have to switch my video back on. Thank you. Just my initial reflection is I probably need to upgrade my backdrop compared to everybody else, although I do have the light bulb here for some ideas. But thank you for the opportunity to talk at today's event. I'm very much enjoying it and hope everybody else is as well. As Brian said, look, I'm Stephen McGonigal, Head of the Energy Intelligence Branch within the Energy Group from the Department for the Economy in Northern Ireland. We have responsibility for producing a new Northern Ireland energy strategy by the end of this year. And I wouldn't be doing my duty if I didn't indicate that the consultation for the strategy finishes tomorrow. So if anybody needs to pop in a response, they'd be very much welcome. I'm going to talk about the value of the US-Ireland programme from a Northern Ireland perspective. This Credence project is funded through the US-Ireland Research and Development Partnership, and it's a vibrant partnership among the United States, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. My department, specifically the Higher Education Division, actually funds the Northern Ireland component of this Credence project, as demonstrated in the earlier session. And it shows clear evidence of meeting the programme goal, which is namely to increase the level of collaborative research and development among researchers and industry professions across the 3 jurisdictions. As the lead in energy intelligence within the department, and also as a former statistician, I'm very conscious of the need for robust evidence to inform policy decisions. We are currently in the midst of a significant new Northern Ireland energy strategy. The context for this strategy has changed substantively since the 2010 position when the Strategic Energy Framework was published. In particular, since 2019, when the UK became the first major economy to commit to 100% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2050. This net zero target represents a significant step change in the commitment to addressing climate crisis. And here in Northern Ireland, our Assembly are currently examining and debating actually 2 climate change bills that propose to set a target for Northern Ireland to achieve a net zero greenhouse gas emissions by either 2045 or a reduction of 82% by 2050. The latter target has actually been recommended by the Climate Change Committee for the UK as a fair and equitable contribution for Northern Ireland towards the UK net zero position by 2050. The energy system is very complex, lots of moving parts. There are systems within systems, and this is one of the key benefits of the Credence Collaborative Project by adopting a system of systems approach. At one end, focusing on the control and telecommunications associated with individual devices, such as solar PV panels, electric vehicles, moving right through to the power system and whole energy system, and then on to the economy and wider society. While the role of technology is, of course, critically important in the transition to a low carbon future, what's also really important are the policy levers, the economic dimensions, and the wider societal aspects. Exploring these in parallel is something we're doing in developing our energy strategy, and it's the approach the research teams are adopting in Credence. I can appreciate firsthand the benefits of this approach to creating research in line with policy developments. Last year, we developed a new energy transition model, and this was the first Northern Ireland regional initiative to create an energy model representing the major energy sectors. It's an open source simulation tool which examines at a high level the energy balance for Northern Ireland, and has been developed around the same principles of a system of systems, strong collaboration. It's critical to get a holistic understanding of both the challenges and opportunities associated with the energy transition. Achieving net zero carbon requires an in-depth understanding of the existing energy use, costs, and benefits of different options, and the choices from a whole system perspective to aid policy and investment decisions, as well as the impact of the transition. Whole sector modelling and analysis is required to understand how the entire energy system and the constituent parts within it might interact and collectively contribute to delivering the transition. And I reflect on Joseph's diagram at the start, at the top level and drilling down to the kind of various models that all kind of interconnect. This Credence project and Dr. Foley from Queen's output are actually helping with the energy transition inputs and the future energy scenario development, and actually the wider departmental Northern Ireland research agenda. So we very much welcome the addition of this Credence research project to the evidence base and the contribution it will make to the support that the policy development connected with the energy strategy here in Northern Ireland.
Stephen, thank you very much. And it's fascinating to hear these parallel challenges, essentially the challenges we were grappling with within the research project and the challenges you're grappling with in terms of, I suppose, determining the evidence or establishing the evidence for policy formation. And thanks also to your colleagues in the department who are part of the funding arm for this. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We'll move now to Angelina LaRose, who also will have a good understanding of the complexity of modeling energy systems. Angelina is the Assistant Administrator for Energy Analysis in the Energy Information Administration in the US. Angelina, over to you. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Brian. And thank you for having me here today. I've just been very genuinely impressed by all the presentations from this morning, and just the scope and the level of thought and consideration that has gone into the Credence project. So I commend the effort and appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts. I'll be focusing my thoughts on the value of collaboration and transparency in building energy models, clearly elements that have been reflected in the Credence project. As Brian just mentioned, I lead the modeling efforts for the US Energy Information Administration, which is the independent statistical and analytical organization within the US Department of Energy. EIA's modeling program directly contributes to our 3 flagship outlooks, which contain short and long-term domestic and international forecasts and projections. We have 3 different complex modeling systems to support these publications, and we just recently kicked off at the beginning of this year, a project evaluating these systems to better understand what the next generation of those models should look like. This is of particular importance and value as we contemplate running deeper decarbonization scenarios than we have previously. That's not to say in recent years that there hasn't been any modeling development activities undertaken at EIA. We've within our energy modeling systems, we've updated technology representation, including adding better representation of battery energy storage technologies and hybrid PV storage technologies to support the increased penetration of intermittent renewables. We've also employed novel modeling techniques to capture how certain aspects of the energy market is evolving in terms of how it operates. And one example of this is we've evolved our solar rooftop model from one based purely off of financial or economic decisions to one that acknowledges that the social influences affect decision making. And I was particularly interested in some of the kind of the community outreach that you all endeavored on in the Credence project to kind of get to really understand, that element of social decision making and social thought. Our thought with their solar rooftop model is there's definitely, as we've seen in the United States, an aspect that if your neighbor has solar, you're more inclined to get solar energy installed on your rooftop as well. So that enters into the equation. It's not just a purely financial one. So we basically built a contagion model to represent that, which was something relatively novel for our EIA's energy models. So my reflections today are coming from a place of someone that has very intimate knowledge of the challenges that come with building complex energy models, particularly ones that anticipate and capture a rapidly evolving environment with implementation of far-reaching policy objectives and rapidly transformative technologies. The energy system is very complex with a lot of moving parts. As Stephen just mentioned, there are systems within systems. Anyone in the business of energy modeling understands how integrated and complex the market is. It is nearly impossible to examine a piece of the energy market in isolation and expect the results to accurately capture how the market will evolve. So as Stephen mentioned in his reflection, one of the key benefits that I also see in the Credence collaborative project is it adopts this system of systems approach with aspects focusing on a very granular level, such as the control and telecommunication associated with individual devices, but then layering on different modeling resolutions, time horizons, and ultimately linking the economy with the wider society. So again, a system of systems approach, which is needed when you're dealing with such a complex market. The changing dynamics within the energy market and the challenges that come with that demand that energy modelers foster a spirit of collaboration and transparency, something that you can clearly see in the presentations from this morning. When I discuss with EIA's various stakeholders, or frankly, anybody that will listen to me, what the value is and what the Energy Information Administration does. In addition to being founded on independence and policy neutrality, which is just fundamentally needed in terms of what we're trying to achieve at EIA. One of the things that is also fundamental for us to achieve success is to operate in a wholly transparent fashion. So in addition to this translating, so what that translates into is our models, our model documentation, assumptions, technical reports, and other research is being published on our website. Additionally, we also engage with others working in the energy modeling space. So this includes, we have collaborative linkages with the Stanford University's Energy Modeling Forum, which brings together various energy modeling groups in both public and private sector to examine particular scenarios using their own respective modeling systems. The current analysis is focusing on an expanded electrification in the United States as well as North America. We also, EIA also participates in the International Energy Agency's ETSA Technology Collaborative Program. These forums provide not only a venue for us and others to perform due diligence on our modeling systems, but it also plays a critically important role in discovering and sharing new approaches, methods, and insight. So the Credence project is a great example of the benefits that can emerge from this collaborative research between energy modeling groups in the United States, Ireland, and Northern Ireland. This is also evidenced in the over 30 peer-reviewed journal papers that came out of this project that are testaments to the robustness of the approaches developed and applied, and demonstrate a commitment to sharing the results and willingness to be open and transparent. So with that, others have spoken about the benefits of this research to the industry partners and the policy systems, which really speaks to the ability of the Credence partners to translate the research results from this project into useful insights that can deliver impact. And really at base of what we're all trying to do here, these useful analytic insights are ultimately what we build models for. So many congratulations again. It's a very impressive project.
Thank you very much, Angelina. I have some sense of the complexity of the Irish energy system, but I don't envy your task at all in trying to model the US energy system, that scale. So thank you very much for those reflections. As well as the energy system models and modeling requirements being complex, energy and climate policy is another complex space, particularly with the increasing ambitions that are growing, driven by citizens and ultimately being followed in many jurisdictions by the political leadership. And it's our last speaker, Brian Carroll, would be very familiar with this process. He's tasked with the climate policy development in Ireland in his role as Assistant Secretary General in the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications. And not only grappling with the policy complexity, but having to grapple with the amount of, the vast amount of evidence that's available for policy formation. So Brian Carroll, over to you, please, to give your reflections, please.
Thanks very much, Brian. At the outset this afternoon, our minister mentioned the Climate Action Bill, and Ambassador Mulhall then mentioned the step up in ambition on...
Sorry, Brian, just to mention your camera is blocked at the moment.
Okay, certainly my video is on. I'm not muted. Not clear to me why.
Well, it looks like there's a blockage in front of your camera. That's what it appears like. Maybe that's not the case.
It doesn't seem to be. No, I was using it earlier. Apologies for this. Maybe if I just speak with my camera off with
Sure.
that.
Please do.
Look less unusual. Apologies for that. So the climate bill, which the minister mentioned, is due to be enacted by July. And once that is enacted, our 2030 target of a 51% reduction in emissions and our 2050 target of net zero no later than 2050 become legal requirements. Our Climate Change Advisory Council is going to be required to propose economy-wide carbon budgets, and our minister will have to respond to those economy-wide budgets through a climate action plan, including setting out sectoral decarbonisation ranges. So clearly, in terms of the step up in ambition and the transformation that's to happen in our energy system, our agricultural system, and the wider economy, there are very, very big policy decisions to be made. And robust evidence is needed to inform and underpin those decisions. So in terms of the work we're doing with the US via the Credence program, the outputs, results, and outcomes couldn't be more timely in terms of informing those decisions. Within the department here, we've greatly benefited from the energy systems modelling that's at the heart of the Credence project, not just in terms of developing national policy, but also in responding to proposals that come out at EU level and Ireland's contribution to enhanced EU ambition. It's really important to us as policymakers to have a very good understanding of the least cost energy systems pathways to achieve different levels of emissions reduction or increased levels of renewable energy when we're making our decisions. We need to be able to answer questions such as how far can we go with emissions reduction? What's the marginal cost of additional abatement? What are the energy system costs? What's the appropriate choice of carbon budgets, and what's the appropriate sectoral division of those budgets? And the outputs of the energy systems modelling are currently being used both by the department in the development of the Climate Action Plan, and I know by the Climate Change Advisory Council in terms of examining the carbon budgets they're planning to propose. Another element that I'd like to highlight, I mean, there's obviously a technocratic piece of work to be done to understand least cost pathways, but ultimately this transformation is about getting people to come with you and people to rise to the challenge and embrace the opportunities. And again, there's been research insights that provide information on social dimensions of climate mitigation, and two in particular I'd like to call out. One piece of research that I found particularly useful and interesting sought to quantify customers' willingness to have their electricity curtailed at times. This would be as a mechanism for increasing the flexibility of the system as we bring on more wind, both onshore and offshore. And the second piece in terms of this societal insights is work that's been done on the rural energy transition in practice, and researchers looking to understand the process of how low carbon technology becomes adopted and how societal capacity can grow to support climate change. And again, historically, we've had some resistance to embracing these new technologies. So insights around societal acceptance are very, very important to policy making. I'd just like to finish by calling out one other dimension to the US-Ireland collaboration. It has supported collaborative research between ourselves and our colleagues in Northern Ireland. And obviously with Northern Ireland, we share the mitigation challenges. Both of us have a very high share of agriculture in our emissions, and also the opportunities. We have an all-Ireland power system that's become world leading in terms of the integration of variable renewable electricity. Essentially a small island grid with limited interconnection that is hitting very, very high levels of renewable electricity penetration. So in terms of addressing the shared challenges and harnessing the opportunities, that collaboration with Northern Ireland is hugely important. So I'd like to finish by congratulating Credence for its work to date, and I certainly look forward to working with the researchers into the future and harnessing their results and their insights to shape policy in the most effective way to deliver on government priorities. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Brian. I really appreciate that, and it's great to hear the usefulness of the research in terms of policy formation. So I'd like to invite my Credence colleague, Joe DeCarlos, to give some closing remarks on this session. Joe, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Brian. I'm conscious that we're just a bit over time here, so I'll keep my remarks brief, but I just wanted to send out a bunch of thank yous to everyone who participated. So first of all, to the Credence researchers who helped to carry out all this work over the last several years, and for the work that's ongoing. We also want to thank the funding bodies for making this work possible. So that includes in the US, the National Science Foundation, Science Foundation Ireland in Ireland, and Department for the Economy in Northern Ireland. We hope we can continue working on this to extend this project and find ways to continue the work. We also want to thank all of today's presenters who contributed to the proceedings. And we also really want to thank the respondents. You all provided excellent reflections on our research and also discussed the current state of energy systems research and where things are headed. We also want to acknowledge our Industrial Advisory Committee. They provided a lot of timely feedback and advice over the duration of this project. We want to thank the staff at Mirai who worked tirelessly on this event, including Niall, Aoife, and Tara. And then finally, I really want to extend my heartfelt thanks to Ambassador Mulhall and the embassy staff for participating in the event. It's truly an honor to have your presence here. And then just as a final closing note, just more personally, I just want to say what a privilege it's been to really work on this project, not only to be able to participate in the research, but all the intangible benefits that come from these kind of international collaborations. I feel like it's really enriched my own research program. I know that my students have really benefited from this. Brian alluded to it earlier, but we've had student exchanges where we've had the opportunity to travel to Ireland and Northern Ireland, and I know that it's been a really enriching experience for me and for all those involved. So with that, I'd like to officially close the event. Brian, I don't know if you wanted to add a last word or. Okay, well, with that, I'd like to officially close the event. And I, again, really thank everyone for their participation. It's very much appreciated. And we look forward to working with you in the future. Take care, everybody.